in my experience, although I don't coach people privately right now like you're doing, I certainly have been working with people for over 30 years in that regard. And even this has happened to me sometimes, Ryan, that sometimes I feel like we indulge in the Oreos or even the cannabis or the drinking or whatever it is, the over partying or, binge shopping, pick your self-soothing
Yeah.
mechanism, right?
Yeah.
Because I think it's because what would you say to people who they're trying to self-soothe? They don't know how else to kind of placate that or give themselves that need that's not being met of, look, I had a hard day at work. I really, I did well. I ate well today. I took care of business. I did all these, I did my best. And now it's the end of the day and I deserve this. Like what's the big deal for me to smoke a joint or for me, come on, I'm a good person. I pay my taxes. I think we've all had those thoughts of like, I deserve this, like giving ourselves some love. So how do we find that? How do we know when it's like, no, you're not paying attention to core values, you're really not meeting your needs, or you're not really using it for its medicinal qualities. It is really a crutch that you now have an addiction to rather than dealing with what the real issue is. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
This is a great question, and I'll go a couple different ways here. And the first thing I'll say is a quote that I heard and I reformatted because I never remember quotes exactly. But to the degree that you don't have a deep why, like a deep meaning in life, you're going to distract yourself with cycles of pleasure. And something that, a lot of people fail to understand, a lot of people I work with, is that happiness is not pleasure and pleasure is not happiness. And a lot of, ancient doctrines actually say that the cycles of pleasure actually take us away from the innate happiness that we are, right? A lot of people think that happiness is something you have to go get or something you have to work for, but really it's something that we are. And a lot of people, they're in this analysis paralysis. And the analogy I use here is that their day is so full, and there's two different sides of this. The person A that works a job they don't like, they're stressed out, they got bills to pay, that type of archetype. And then there's person B who is actually loving what they do, but they have their hands in a lot of different, places, a lot of irons in the fire, like us, right? And so each one of those people, they have a lot of clouds in their day. And think of them as white, fluffy clouds, right? So they're not dark, rainy clouds or anything like that, but just like there's no room for the sun to come through, right? And so the sun, in that sense, could be happiness, it could be fulfillment, it could be relaxation, it could be any of these things. But if their mental process, if they're up in their heads so much that just literally it's like they have a traffic jam in their mind, no matter if you're loving what you do or you're not liking what you do, you're going to have these clouds. And so what I always say is that to the degree that you're filling your calendar up or your to-do list up that much, because I've been through this, it's the degree to which you're missing a connection to yourself. And you're not really knowing yourself, because if you did, you'd understand, like, okay, like for me, right? Like I know I interact with cannabis on the weekends, and that way during the weeks, like this is actually how I use cannabis. And one of the main reasons I use it is because I use it as a teacher. And so what I mean by that is that I know that when I interact with cannabis, I can relax, I can feel content, right? I can be silly, I can be a certain side of myself that I would describe as vacation vibration, right? Everything is right in the world, everything's perfect. But if I do that every single night, then I am outsourcing my power onto this plant, or fill in your drink or whatever, your Oreos, whatever it is, right? You're outsourcing your power onto this thing to provide comfort for you, to provide connection for you. And so the reason that I abstain through the weeks is so then on the weekends, I have that objective check-in. Okay, I know I can relax, I know I can do these things. And then through the week, I abstain from everything. That way I can figure out, okay, how well am I doing at connecting with myself, at relaxing, at being content, at feeling happy at the end of the day? And then it's almost like chum in the water, right? Where if you think there's no sharks in Cape Cod, right, in the summer, and you don't see any, you can throw a bunch of chum in the water and pretty quickly you're going to see a great white appear, right? And so very similar to that, on the weekends, what I'm doing is I'm providing like that objective check-in, and then through the weeks I'm throwing the chum in the water and seeing what comes up. Am I having a really hard time relaxing? Okay, what's going on there? And then I can do my best hypotheses through the week, and then the next weekend I can intentionally sit with cannabis and go, cannabis, I had a really big problem relaxing this week, I'd like to see why. And then the plant will show me glimpses of what is possible for me to figure out. Then the next week it's my job to do the work to continue figuring out that mystery. But what most people do is they end up numbing out, whether it's with Oreos, drinking, working out, right? They work out too much. I mean, anything can become this cycle of dependency. And what I always say specifically about cannabis is that it's not that cannabis is dependency forming or addictive. That's one way to look at it, but that also disempowers someone because they feel like this plant has power over them. It's addictive. They can't do anything about it. It's just the nature of the plant. Instead of realizing that they're living in discomfort of some sort, and the feelings of comfort that that plant or that drink or that Oreo provides is extremely addictive to people that are living in discomfort and are failing to realize how to connect with themselves to relieve that discomfort. So for me, some of the things I've learned are, oh, at the end of the day, there's a specific point where I know I'm going to want to do more. And that voice in my brain is going to be like, keep going, right? And that I have to avoid that and go, no, I need to play guitar now. I need to lay in bed and watch Gaia, right? And do things that fill my battery back up. I need to just meditate. Sometimes I need to go to bed earlier than I want to, right? Than that voice is telling me. And so these are the things I've learned about myself is that, hey, I have these programs and patterns that do work really well for me, give me a lot of drive, but also I need to make sure that I'm the one that like is in control of them, because if I let them take control, then I'm going to feel out of control, and then I'm going to reach for whatever I can to distract myself from what I'm feeling inside. And this is where a lot of people mess up, specifically with cannabis, is they think, oh, you can't overdose on it, oh, it's totally safe. And what I say is, no, you can really damage yourself with it, because you're teaching yourself that you don't have what it takes to figure yourself out, and this other thing that's external to you does. And if we think about, I'm in the mystery school, and so like when we think about all these ancient doctrines and different cosmology, it pretty much all goes back to the idea that if we are created in God's image, and you can change out God for source or whatever if people don't like the term God, but if we're created in that image, then we have everything inside of us to be God, right? And to be a God rather. And so if we know that, then the more we externalize our power, the more we're forgetting who and what we truly are. And that is when we're not going to be able to be in our power zone and not going to be able to be the medicine that the world needs. Because, right, like being a connector, when you really start figuring yourself out, you just going and hanging out with someone, they're like, wow, Amy, you just really bring me up. I mean, this call, right? Like we're charging each other's batteries right now because we've done the work to figure out who we are. We know that we're goofballs. We know that like we love having fun. And we also know that we can rock and get work done and do this stuff, right? And we also know that like sometimes that can be a diminishing return. So we've learned all these things about ourselves. And the idea is that we are perfect the way we are. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing to like, we're not broken. But at the same time, it's almost like I like to view it as a challenge, right? It's like, ooh, I have these parts of me that maybe aren't working out the best for me. And now I get to solve this mystery. And by solve, I don't mean fix. I mean just work with the tide rather than against it, if that makes sense.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.